What if I told you that those fake scenarios running through your head, the arguments you replay at 2 a.m., the conversations you rehearse before they ever happen, the entire alternate lives you construct in the space between two breaths, aren't a sign that something's wrong with you? What if they're actually evidence of a mind that processes the world at a resolution most people can't access? I know that sounds completely backwards, but stick with me, because the neuroscience behind this is about to reframe everything you thought was a flaw. And by the end of this video, you're going to see what you've been calling overthinking in a completely different light. Think about the last time you caught yourself doing this. Maybe you were lying in bed, and suddenly you're back in a conversation from 3 years ago, except this time you said exactly the right thing. You delivered the line that should have come to you in the moment. And for a few seconds, it felt so real that you almost believed it had gone differently. Or maybe you were driving, hands on the wheel, and your mind started scripting an entire confrontation with someone you haven't even spoken to yet. You built their arguments, you dismantled them, you walked through every branch of the conversation tree before a single word had been exchanged. Or perhaps it was quieter than that. You found yourself imagining a version of your life where you made a different choice, took a different job, stayed in a different city, said yes when you said no, and you watched it play out like a film, scene by scene, almost involuntarily. Here's what almost nobody tells you about this experience. Most people who do it keep it entirely private. Not because it's shameful, but because it's hard to explain. It feels vivid in a way that's difficult to describe to someone whose mind doesn't work this way. It feels a little unhinged, a little too immersive. And if you've ever wondered whether this means you're anxious or checked out or somehow broken, you're not alone. Millions of people experience this daily, and almost all of them assume it's a problem. But here's what the research actually shows. What you're doing isn't escaping reality. You're running an advanced simulation engine. And the minds most prone to this aren't the ones that are struggling. They're the ones that are wired for deeper processing. Now, I want to pause here because this is where most people check out. They hear your brain rewards daydreaming and think that means all mental simulation is automatically productive. It's not. The distinction, and this is the part that actually matters, is what kind of scenarios your mind generates and what they reveal about the architecture underneath them. Let's start with something that probably happened to you recently. Your brain just wouldn't shut off. Neuroscientists have identified a network in your brain called the default mode network, or DMN. It's what activates when you're not focused on a specific task, when your mind wanders, when you daydream, when you mentally time travel into the past or future. For most people, the DMN is a background process. It hums along quietly. But for some minds, and this is where it gets really interesting, the DMN doesn't hum. It roars. Research published in 2021 found that frontoparietal and default mode network connectivity actually varies with intelligence. In simpler terms, the more efficiently your DMN talks to the parts of your brain responsible for logic and problem solving, the higher your cognitive capacity tends to be. Your simulation engine isn't disconnected from your rational mind. For some people, those two systems are deeply integrated and constantly exchanging data. Then there's the dopamine piece. A 2026 neuroscience study discovered something remarkable. When you imagine a future scenario, especially one where you solve a problem or achieve a goal, your brain releases dopamine. It literally rewards you for simulating outcomes before they happen. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. A brain that can model threats and opportunities before encountering them is a brain that survives. Your ancestors who rehearsed the hunt before the hunt, who simulated the social dynamic before entering the village, they had an edge. And they passed that architecture down to you. But there's an even deeper layer. And this is the one that explains why your brain won't stop. In 1927, psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something strange. She was sitting in a cafe in Berlin, watching waiters manage dozens of orders without writing anything down. The moment the bill was paid, the waiters forgot everything. But until the check was closed, they held every detail in perfect memory. Zeigarnik ran experiments. She had people work on puzzles, then interrupted them before they could finish. What she found was startling. Unfinished tasks occupied the mind nearly twice as much as completed ones. Your brain holds open loops, and it won't close them until the scenario resolves. This isn't a glitch, it's a feature. Your mind is designed to keep working on problems even when you've stopped consciously thinking about them. The fake scenarios? They're your brain closing open loops, running simulations until the unresolved becomes resolved. Before we get to the 7 signs, I want to give you a framework for understanding what's actually happening when your brain runs these simulations. Cognitive scientists who study mental time travel, that's the actual term by the way, have identified 3 distinct types of self-generated thought. And most people who experience intense fake scenarios are cycling through all 3 without realizing their different processes. The first is counterfactual thinking. That's when you replay the past and change it. The argument you win, the choice you unmake. Your brain isn't obsessing, it's extracting data from a failure point so it doesn't repeat. The second is episodic future simulation. That's when you construct a future scenario that hasn't happened yet. The conversation you rehearse, the job interview you pre-live. Your brain is building a predictive model, testing variables, reducing uncertainty. The third is mind-wandering with personal salience. That's when your thoughts drift into scenarios that feel emotionally significant. Alternate lives, different paths, versions of yourself you could have been. Your brain is mapping your values by showing you what you care about enough to simulate. These aren't distractions from reality. They're your brain's way of processing reality at a depth that conscious thought alone can't reach. And once you understand that, the 7 signs become impossible to ignore. Here are 7 signs that what you've been calling fake scenarios is actually an advanced pattern recognition system doing exactly what it was built to do. 1. You rehearse conversations before they happen, sometimes days in advance. This isn't social anxiety, not primarily. It's social simulation. Your brain running a predictive model of a future interaction, testing dozens of possible variables before a single word is spoken. The research on mental rehearsal is clear. The same neural pathways fire when you imagine an action as when you perform it. Elite athletes have used this for decades, visualizing every movement before the game. What you're doing at a dinner table, in a meeting room, or before a difficult phone call is the same mechanism. Your brain is warming up. 2. You replay old arguments, and this time, you win. Your brain isn't torturing you with the past. It's running what researchers call a counterfactual optimization loop. It's asking, where exactly was the failure point, and what would correct it? This is the same logic that powers reinforcement learning in artificial intelligence. The system reviews past outputs, identifies the error, and retrains. You're not dwelling, you're iterating. And each replay sharpens the model. 3. You imagine entire alternate lives. Different careers, different cities, different versions of yourself. This is episodic future thinking, operating at full capacity. Your brain isn't just simulating one outcome. It's mapping branching decision trees, tracing causal chains from a single choice to its long-term consequences. Most people can only do this reactively when life forces a decision. You're doing it proactively during quiet moments. That's not escapism. That's a brain-running scenario analysis on your entire life trajectory. 4. You notice patterns in people's behavior that others completely miss. Because you've already simulated dozens of possible versions of someone's motivations, reactions, and hidden intentions, your brain has built a far richer internal model of human behavior than someone whose mind doesn't work this way. You're not overthinking people. You've run more simulations. Your predictions are more accurate because your training data is denser. This principle shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. 5. You struggle to shut your mind off at night, especially when something unresolved is hanging over you. This is the Zeigarnik effect in action, combined with the DMN getting its full processing window. During the day, your executive functions are occupied: emails, conversations, tasks. But at night, those systems go quiet and your DMN finally gets the bandwidth it's been waiting for. The reason your mind won't stop isn't because something is broken. It's because something is unresolved, and your simulation engine won't rest until it's processed. 6. You sometimes feel more connected to your imagined scenarios than to your actual surroundings. When your brain releases dopamine for simulated outcomes that feel more complete, more meaningful, or more resolved than your current reality, it's not a sign of dissociation. It's a signal. Your mind is showing you what it values, what it's missing, what it wants to move toward. The simulation isn't the problem, it's the prototype. The question isn't, why am I escaping? But, what is this simulation telling me I need to build? 7. You've been hiding this part of yourself because it felt strange, maybe even for years. And this is the one that matters most. The fact that you kept this private isn't evidence that it's dysfunctional. It's evidence that you sensed, correctly, that not everyone's mind works this way. You notice the gap between how you process and how others seem to. But here's what the science confirms. Different isn't defective. Different is architecture. And once you stop treating your simulation engine like a glitch and start treating it like infrastructure, the same mind that used to keep you up at night becomes the reason you see what others miss. Here's where most people get stuck. You now understand why your brain does this. You can name the 3 types of simulation. You can recognize the 7 signs. But understanding without integration doesn't change anything. And that's where the simulation protocol comes in. I want you to try 2 things this week. First, the scenario audit. Take 3 scenarios your mind generated recently, an argument you replayed and won, a future conversation you rehearsed, an alternate life you explored, and ask yourself 3 questions about each one. Write the answers down. 1. What was the actual problem my brain was trying to solve here? Not the surface content, the underlying variable. Were you preparing for a conflict, mapping a decision, processing a loss? 2. Was the simulation accurate, or was I adding assumptions that don't exist in reality? This is the calibration step. Your simulation engine is powerful, but it runs on the data you feed it. If you've been feeding it assumptions instead of facts, the output will drift. 3. What is one action I can take in the real world based on what this simulation revealed? Not a thought, an action, a message you send, a question you ask, a decision you make. Second, the simulation window. Pick a consistent 10-minute window every day, morning coffee, lunch break, right before bed. And give your simulation engine a specific problem to work on. Something concrete. A decision you're avoiding. A conversation you're nervous about. A creative problem that feels stuck. Then let your mind run. Don't try to control where it goes. Don't judge what comes up. Just observe. Here's what this does. Most people let their simulation engine run in the background, reacting to whatever unresolved tension is loudest. They're passive passengers. But when you give that system intentional inputs, when you treat it the way an athlete treats visualization or a chess player treats position analysis, you're no longer being simulated. You're doing the simulating. The goal isn't to stop imagining. The goal is to stop imagining things that keep you stuck and start giving that processing power a direction worth running toward. Here's what I want you to sit with. The ironic art of mental simulation isn't about escaping reality. It's about being so attuned to it, so aware of its complexity and its hidden variables, that your brain needs a dedicated processing layer just to keep up with what you're taking in. You're not someone who lives in their head. You're someone whose cognitive architecture includes a simulation engine powerful enough to model futures, rehearse outcomes, extract lessons from the past, and detect patterns most people never notice. That's not a character flaw. That's not anxiety. That's not a sign that you're checked out or disconnected or broken. That's a processing advantage you haven't learned to aim yet. And once you do, once you stop treating it like a quirk, you need to hide and start treating it like infrastructure. You need to train. The same mind that used to keep you up at night becomes the reason you see opportunities before they arrive, navigate conversations before they start, and understand people at a depth that can't be taught. You were never overthinking. You were running simulations at a resolution most hardware can't handle. And the only thing that ever needed to change was learning what to point that engine toward. If you got value from this video, like and subscribe to our channel. If this landed for you, share it with someone who needs to hear that their mind isn't broken, it's just built differently.